Well, guys, I'm going to give you a challenge. Are you up to it? Get a hold of your representatives and your senators and all those good people and ask them where in the world does the Congress of the United States of America derive its powers to pass firearm laws? Ask them. You know, it says in the Constitution, if it's not spelled out, they don't have that power. Now listen to this, people. Now I'll put this in the description. Our Constitution is so simple that Alexander Hamilton expected us to be enlightened enough to distinguish between a legal exercise and an illegal usurpation of power, of authority. He said the people are the natural guardians of the Constitution. You can look that up in Federalist number 16. When, then, if our Constitution is something that people are expected to know and enforce, is it plausible to assert that the representatives we send to Washington, or even the Supreme Court justices, are incapable of understanding it? Justices on the Supreme Court have been, excuse me, better get this down here just a little bit more, have been perverting the Constitution for a long time. They don't do this because they're stupid and they don't understand our Constitution. Of course not. They violate the Constitution because they claim the right to impose their own personal view on us. Every American over the age of 10 should know the powers of our federal government, or our federal Constitution, delegates to the Congress and to the President, and they are limited and defined. They are called enumerated. So progressives on the Supreme Court back then had to find a way to get around the limitations imposed by the enumerated powers. And they did this by perverting three clauses: the Interstate Commerce Clause, the General Welfare Clause, and the Necessary and Proper Clause. Okay, now I've been looking at this and looking at it. I've tried to make people understand. I'm glad that she put this up because it makes it so much easier. Okay, if you haven't looked it up, here it is. The Interstate Commerce Clause. Webster's 1828 dictionary says commerce is the buying and selling of goods. In Federalist number 22 and 42, Hamilton and Madison explained their primary purpose of the clause to prohibit the states from imposing tax and tolls on merchandise as it's transported through the states for the purpose of buying and selling. Why was that put in place? Because back then, in the 1700s, it's just like today. They want to tax you for every penny they can and stick it in their own pocket. As the goods were moving through from the pioneer days, every doggone state wanted to tax it and add tariffs to it, and it only increased the cost of the product. That's what the general, or what the interstate commerce originally meant. They gave them that thing because all it was doing was causing a whole lot of civil discord among the different states. One state would charge 25% taxes, and the other one would charge 75% taxes. Pretty soon, hey, things are getting way out of whack. Okay. General Welfare Clause. This also came from Webster's 1828 dictionary. Exemption from any unusual event or calamity, the enjoyment of peace and prosperity, or the ordinary blessings of society and government that applies to the state. It has nothing to do with handouts, public relief, or the feds doing whatever they think is a good idea. In Federalist number 41, Madison points out these general terms, which are immediately followed by enumeration of particular powers, which explains and qualifies by recital of particulars. The general phrase, it is an error to focus on general expressions and disregard the specifications which assert and limit their import. The powers over the country at large are largely limited primary to only a few listed enumerated articles. Necessary and Proper Clause. clause delegates to Congress to pass all laws necessary and proper to execute its declared powers. Federalist number 29. The constitutional operation of the intended government would be precisely the same if this clause were entirely obliterated. All this does is give them, they can only pass laws and stuff that are already enumerated. If it's not in there, the government does not have the power to pass it. I told you before. Accordingly, the federal government is nowhere in the Constitution granted authority to abridge, restrict, or infringe in any fashion whatsoever guns or ammo. Thus, all restricted laws made by Congress, all regulations made by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms are unconstitutional as they are outside the scope of powers granted to the Congress and to the executive branch by our Constitution. Restriction of arms and ammunition is not one of the enumerated powers delegated to Congress or to the executive branch. Now, another thing that I'm going to put up here, people, is I told you to go look at the preamble to the Bill of Rights. Why? It's stated in there. Now, remember, they wouldn't pass the Constitution until this stuff was put in. And it says, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. Now, declaratory means this. It's designed to fix what was uncertain, what they didn't understand, or doubtful. It made things clear. And what it did make clear was the Congress has never had the ability to infringe on the Second Amendment, your right to keep and bear arms. It made it perfectly clear. They are constitutionally out of bounds. They are constitutionally barred from infringing upon your gun rights. Period. No question mark. Period. That's what history tells you. I'll tell you what, people, our government is really crazy. It's inconsistent with all the principles of good, solid government. I'll say that again. They are inconsistent with all the principles of good, solid government. I should say limited government. They think they are kings and queens. So the clause permits the execution of powers already delegated and enumerated in the Constitution. No additional substantial powers were granted by the clause. I'll put a link to this. I think you guys should all go look at this. What else can I... Yeah, I'll put a link to this, and there's another link I'm going to put in too. I think this will help educate you people. For God's sake, people, you've got to know the Constitution. You've got to know what your rights are. You can't walk around and expect others to stand up and fight for you. Reach down there and pull up your big girl panties. Let's get this show on the road. Let's put Congress in its place, because they are way out of bounds. Thanks for watching. Yeah, ask them where their power is derived. It can't come from the interstate commerce. It can't come from the general welfare, and it cannot come from the necessary and proper clause. If it's not listed in the Constitution, Congress doesn't have the power. I'll tell you what pisses me off, and I wasn't going to say this because we still need these people. No, I'm not going to say it. I'll do that for another video. Thanks for watching.